Isn't that a fantastic morning? Just could have talked all day. I was writing down so many great lines. I was chuckling about Larry Summers' mushy relativism. There were so many great lines. So we're going to shift up the energy a little bit. I'm going to make you do some work. And also shift the focus a little bit, instead of some of the big issues that you're dealing with on campus, to more internal focus about how you lead and how you work with your executive teams. This is sort of the corner office hat that I wear. I've been teaching leadership for a number of years and really have picked up a lot of great insights and, frankly, tools from some of the CEOs that I've interviewed. So you guys ready to do a little bit of work? Okay, good. So what we're going to talk about right now is a simple idea of something called a user manual. And you're going to be writing yours over the next half an hour or so, but let me explain it. I'm going to give you some examples. The basic idea of a user manual, the simplest way to explain it is like, let's say all of you hired me, and I came to work for you starting Monday. We've gotten to know each other a little bit during your job interview, but I'm coming to work for you. I show up on the first day. You are basically a silhouette to me. I kind of know you, but I don't really know who you are. But I'm going to find out what you're like as a boss. Over the next 3 to 6 months, I am going to find out, just through trial and error, that I'm going to do stuff that makes you grind your teeth, right? And maybe you'll tell me right away. It's like, Adam, like when you do that, I don't like that. Or maybe I'll do it 3 times before you tell me. I'm also going to find out about the things that I'll do that you really like, that'll earn me an extra gold star. But are you going to tell me that like right away, or am I just going to figure this out through pattern recognition? Because the basic idea is we are all human beings, and we all have our quirks, right? We just need to acknowledge that. We're all a little bit weird. We all have our stuff as leaders, as much as we try and, follow all the rules and do all the right things. So the first point about user management is just acknowledge that we all have our quirks. If you do that, then the idea is, what if you told somebody up front, on the first day you started working with them, what those are, how you like to work with them? What if you presented that user manual so that that silhouette could suddenly be filled in? It's like, okay, now I get that. Memo to self, don't do this, he doesn't like that, or do a lot of this because she just told me she really likes that. That way I can focus more on doing the work rather than keeping one eye on you trying to figure out what you're like as a boss and what your quirks are. So this idea of the user manual, I've been presenting it a lot over the last couple of years. Small groups of CEOs. I presented at our New Work Summit about 1.5 years ago, and one of the CEOs was in the audience and literally rushed back to his computer and wrote this LinkedIn blog post that was read about, literally got tens of thousands of hits. And I've just heard over the years from CEOs who adopt this, they just give me a lot of feedback. We took this into our company, my executive team, we did it company-wide, and it's been transformative. So I want you to know that this is real-world tested. Companies are doing this. I even had an experience where I was interviewing a CEO for Corner Office, and I was asking about his culture, and he said to me, yeah, we do this thing, it's called a user manual. I go, yeah, I think I've heard of that. So it's kind of like going underground, and it really does work, and I think you'll enjoy doing it. So, quick story, I was coming home on a transatlantic flight, and I had about half an hour to kill, so I was, flipping through what was on the screens. You guys know the HBO show Silicon Valley? You guys heard of it? So it's basically about these, a group of friends. They're doing a tech startup, and I'm going to show you a clip from it because I was watching on the plane. And it's like, this is perfect. This is what it's all about. So the clip I'm going to show you is about the main character, the CEO, with this sort of would-be maybe girlfriend, and the CEO's friends have told her that he's got this quirk about coding, his coding preferences, and that it's about like tabs versus spaces when he codes. So I'm going to play this clip now. Here we go.
Richard, what's wrong?
Nothing. Nothing. Literally, it's all good. Come on.
Oh my God.
I'm sorry.
Your roommates are right. You really hate spaces.
No. I don't. It's not hate. Hate's a strong word. Truth be told, I do have a slight preference for tabs, but that's only because I'm anal and because I prefer precision.
Well, not to pick a fight here, but if you really care about precision, wouldn't you use spaces? But whatever. Once it goes through the compiler, it's the same thing, right?
Yeah, technically, yes. I guess I just don't understand why anyone would use spaces over tabs. Like, if it's all the same, well, why not just use tabs?
Because it could look different on other people's computers.
Tabs create smaller file sizes, all right? I run a compression company. Trust me, I've devoted my life to minimalizing file sizes. It's what I do. I mean, I do not get why anyone would use spaces over tabs. I mean, why not just use Vim over Emacs?
I do use Vim over Emacs.
Oh, God help us. Okay, you know what? I don't think this is gonna work. I'm so sorry. I mean, like, what? We're gonna bring kids into this world with that over the heads? That's not really fair to them, don't you think?
So the thing I love about that clip is, like, we all have a little bit of that in all of us, right? A little bit of thing. It's like tabs, not spaces. And again, wouldn't it be great if you just told people up front about that so they don't find out in these kind of awkward conversations? So I first heard about this idea from this CEO, who I interviewed a number of years ago, and this is the simple logic behind it. He was trying to think of a way to shorten the learning curve. This whole idea, you're going to find out this stuff about people anyways, just over time. So why not shorten that learning curve? So what I'm going to do is walk through a few examples of user manuals, including my own, because I'm not going to ask you to do anything that I wouldn't do myself. And as I'm going through these, start thinking about yours and what you would put. I'll put up a bunch of prompt questions at the end to help you think about it more. But just reflect on your own as we walk through some of these examples. So let's start with Ivar's user manual. My favorite part is, like, this is what he puts at the top of the page: how to work with me, right? And for best results. It's a true user manual. It's like a computer or vacuum you buy, right? For best results, this is what you need to know about him. So let's look at some of what he has to say about himself. I like this. I mean, you've all heard this. Leaders often say, I like people who bring me solutions, not problems. This is his way of saying that. We all know that phenomenon, right? People who bring us problems, not solutions, and how much fun that is. The thing I really like about this slide is that he says he's being incredibly open. I'm aware of this and I'm working on it. It's the whole point of the user manual. It's not like you're standing on a mountaintop and chiseling it in stone forever. It's just like it's a living document. This is something about me. I'm working on it. So that was his user manual. I included that in one of my interviews one Sunday. And literally the next day, I get an email from this guy. And he says, I've got one of those too. I said, I want to interview you. So he showed his user manual, and at the top, if you don't have to squint, it says Blueprint to Luke and His Quirks. I'll give you some examples. Again, you don't have to worry about squinting, but I just love that. It's like Blueprint to Luke and His Quirks. Just put your own name in there. What would it say? So let's look at what he says specifically. He's at Facebook now, but TravelPod was a small company, so he really wanted to get that fast back and forth. All right, this is a pain point for all of us, right? You know, you don't want that thing, you wake up at 2 in the morning, you send somebody a mail, you don't expect me to jump out of bed and respond to you. But it's always, especially for all of you in leadership positions, there's some people on your team, right, who get back to you right away. There's other people that's like, hey, remember I sent that email? I kind of need an answer. So it'd be good to just set the tone of what your expectations are. Right, totally fair. And you can see how we switched. So the first part of what he was saying was really about him, like these are my quirks. And this is more about like how I'll work with you and about our working relationship. I've read a lot of user manuals just from all the times I've done this presentation and exercise. And I think the best of them have that mix. Just be really honest about your own quirks, but then also talk about how you like to work with the person. So once I was introduced to this idea, I started noticing it coming up in more and more of my interviews. They don't call it a user manual, but I just heard more and more instances of people saying, look, I need to be explicit with my staff, with my team, about how I operate. Because you think of those instances where people come in and say, hey, boss, like, this is really important. And you go, yeah. But it's good to tell them, it's like, if you come back to me 3 times, if it's that important, I totally get it, and it's okay to do that. When I interviewed Sue, she told me that she realized that she had to be explicit about this because she was in a meeting and she was asking questions, and the person who was answering, their voice started quavering. And then she realized, oh, this person feels like they're being interrogated or that I'm skeptical. And her whole point is like, I'm just asking questions because I'm curious. And again, if you signal that up front, then people go, okay, that's great, I got it. And that's just the setup and the punchline. We've all felt that, right? You don't want to find out about a problem late in the game. Call your congressman. This should be a law, people. Just think about it. Wouldn't it be awesome if every email was that short and concise? Okay, so those are just a bunch of examples. What if I had to write a user manual? I've been a manager myself for about a dozen years. So I sat down and wrote my own. Here's what would be in it. I'm kind of crazy about lists and just I try to make sure nothing falls through the cracks, but I can't be 100% on this. When I took over a new team of reporters to manage, I had a meeting with them. I knew some of them. I had worked with some of them before. Some of them were new. It was great because on the first day, I said, look, a couple of things you should know about me. I really don't like corrections. It was a features department that I was managing at the time. Sometimes things happen on deadline, but with features, you're not on a lot of deadline crunches. So I just made it very clear to them. I said, look, I don't like corrections. And I didn't say it in a threatening voice. And over a year and a half, I think we had like 2 corrections in the entire department. I would walk by my reporter's desk and I'd see them like fact-checking madly. And it was wonderful because at no point did I ever have to have that sort of teeth-grinding, difficult conversation with anybody. If they had 3 corrections, it's like, look, you've had 3 corrections, we need to have an adult conversation about this. It didn't have to happen because I was just, and I made it about me. It's like, I have this quirk, I don't like corrections. So again, you kind of avoid that tension. Any other introverts in the room? There's a lot of introverts. It's tough being a leader and an introvert, isn't it? It takes a lot of energy. Anyways, like, I am not the kind of manager who walks around on Monday morning and high-fiving and how was your weekend? Like, I just do not roll that way. So I always need to make it very clear to people because I'm really good one-on-one, as opposed to just sort of glad-handing and small talk. It's like, come into my house, you got something to talk about, I will be all in. I will be fully present. But, I'm not one of those, like, just walk in the halls and, hey, how you doing? I've been editing and working with reporters for a dozen years. I've developed this rule of thumb that every minute that you spend talking about a story before the reporter starts writing, every minute will save you an hour on the back end. It just, to me, it's really where the magic happens, as I say there. Because people need to be taken out of their context, and I just find having a conversation as opposed to staring at a blank screen just makes all the difference in the world. The other metaphor that I use with writing is I want to be there at the rocket launch when you figure out, the arc, the trajectory of the story, because with rocket launches, if you're off 1 degree at the launch, like over time, it's sort of like this. So that's why I always tell my reporters, like, include me in that upfront conversation and we will save a lot of time. So this is a little bit of my Canadian diplomacy showing through. Like, this is a very diplomatic way of saying, like, if you're not self-motivated, it's going to be really a problem. But because just the way I'm wired, it's like I can work with basically anybody who wants to get better at their job, right? Who wants to learn. If I have to manage somebody has a little bit of like, yeah, just leave me alone to do what I do, like, that's not going to go well. I will manage my own career away from that person. Okay, so that's mine. What would you include in your user manual? So here are some prompt questions. I'm going to give you about 10 minutes to write your own, and I'm going to put this slide back up again because I want to show you a couple other more things. But these questions, you don't have to answer them literally or every one. The thing that you should try and get at is about 7 or 8 items. And there's a mix here. The first half, try and have a good mix of like quirks about you, like just the stuff that's just about you. And then the other half should be about how you like to work with people. Again, you don't have to answer these literally. This is just to sort of spark some thoughts. Couple more things I want to touch on before you start in. Again, I've seen so many people's user manuals. I teach a leadership course, and I have my students do it, so I've read a ton of them. And I've seen a few things that creep in that you want to avoid. Not that any of you would ever do these things, but just to let you benefit from others. So the first one is to be specific. It should be as unique as your fingerprint. You don't want anything like you value student-centric excellence, okay? It should literally be as unique as your fingerprint. Be brutally honest. There's no point not being brutally honest, because if you're actually going to present your user manual to people on your team, and ideally you have them present theirs to you, there's no point to not be brutally honest, because everybody's going to find this stuff out anyways. It's just the question, are they going to find out now, or are they going to find out 3 months from now? None of you would ever do this, but I've seen this. And some of the CEOs who have implemented this on their staffs do not use it to enshrine bad behavior. You can't have a user manual where the person says, yeah, about once a week I spill coffee on my keyboard. That's not okay, right? Or somebody's user manual shouldn't be, I'm really bad at meeting deadlines. Like, that's not okay, right? We need to have a talk about that. Keep it relevant to work. Again, not that any of you would ever do this, but if somebody in their user manual would include the fact that they can't wait to get home to get in their pajamas, that's not relevant. right? Like that's too much information. So again, these are just a few guidelines, reminders. So I'm going to put this slide back up. I am going to give you about 8 to 10 minutes to write your own. Any questions? You can shout. It's a fairly small room. Questions about this before you jump in? All right, over to you. Okay, maybe 2 more minutes. I found sometimes when I do this, you see people that literally fill up pages and pages. It's like, oh yeah, and another thing, and another thing. Something else I want to get off my chest. Okay, so what I want you to do now is to pair off or get in groups of threes, just find a buddy, people around you, and share the top, 5 or so things from your user manual. The person who's listening to the user manual, I want you to be an active listener. So you can say them like, just role play, right? Your new boss, you've just been hired, you're gonna be working together. You can push back and say, what do you mean by that? Or give me an example. So again, just role play. Again, you guys can just find it either in groups of 2, groups of 3. One quick housekeeping note, teacher trick that I learned before you do that, because this room's gonna be really noisy and I don't wanna have to yell, when I put up my hand, could everybody who sees me putting up my hand also put up their hand? And then we'll come to quiet quickly and I won't have to yell. Does that all make sense? Okay, so about 7 minutes. All right. So how was that? Did that feel pretty comfortable? Feel pretty natural? A couple of thoughts. One thing I want to be super clear on is that this user manual can be a two-way street. It's not like the manager hereby, presents their user manual to their employee. You want this to be a two-way street. Everybody's got a user manual they can share. You can use this with your executive teams. And I have so many testimonials from CEOs who've written me and said, this works. And I've seen it here at the New York Times. I did user manual presentation for about 200 people on our sales team. And about a week later, I was in a meeting and they were telling me about what they learned about each other. Where a manager, and these two guys were in the meeting, the manager was saying about the guy he supervised, said, yeah, I found out that he doesn't like to be interrupted. Him a lot, but he doesn't like, that's his tabs and spaces, right? And we all have our tabs and spaces. So the other thing that I would suggest is that look at your list, and maybe you've got 8 things there. I will submit to you that one thing on your list is more important than all the other one. One of them is like a little Swiss Army knife, that if the person takes care of that, everything else kind of gets taken care of. So just do a quick check of your own list and which on it would that be. It's like I was saying before, like if you're self-motivated and want to get better, I can basically flex to you. I can work with almost anybody as long as that is true. Any quick questions about this? People want to shout out? Yes. Sure, I don't know if everybody could hear that, but if the question is, if you do this with your leadership teams, do you do it one-on-one or do you do it in a group? I don't know if there's a right way. A lot of people do it as a group exercise because then they find out about each other. And it's also sort of more fun. Like, if all of you are in leadership positions, because there's going to be like, if you actually go back and do this with your teams, you do it one-on-one, there's going to be a little bit of like, whoa, like what's going on here? Right? Like, what is this? Whereas if you meet with your team, and you can make me the fall guy, right? You just say, I went to this conference, there's this really weird guy, Adam Bryant, who came with this really weird exercise, but I thought we'd give it a go, just to sort of disarm people. But again, if you people are in the leadership positions, everybody follows your cues. Like, if you are open and candid, that will give them permission to be as well. Because the one thing that I've learned a lot of things, but one thing in particular about leadership and thinking a lot about it over the years is that as leaders, you set the tone for everything. Everything you say, everything you don't say, everything you do, your body language. So everybody is picking up on all your cues, verbal and nonverbal. And that's why I really do believe this. I know this works. I know it's a powerful tool. And if you try, you'll just get a little more glue with your executive team. You just sort of know each other better because it humanizes everybody, right? It starts from the simple fact that we're all weird and we all have our tabs and spaces. So why not? Why not be upfront about those? So again, I hope this would be helpful. I'm going to turn over now to my colleague Kate Zernicke with her panelists, Ajay Nair and Julia Weed. Thank you very much.